Republican primaries by storm, using his celebrity and business background to propel him to the top of the polls almost from the start. But it was his controversial campaign promises that made the headlines.
Donald J. Trump is calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States until our country's representatives can figure out what the hell is going on.
Kellyanne Conway was allied with Ted Cruz during the primaries, but in July, she joined the Trump campaign as a pollster. By August, he had elevated her to campaign manager. She and campaign chair Steve Bannon seemed to be able to get Trump to be more focused, to be more disciplined. The campaign seemed to scale back some of his most provocative proposals. How did they do it? How important was that to his ultimate victory? I asked her to take us behind the scenes.
You were named campaign manager August 17th, the same day that Steve Bannon was named campaign CEO. It seemed as though, from the outside, you and Steve Bannon were able to convince Donald Trump to be more disciplined in a way that previous campaign managers had not convinced him to do, had not succeeded in getting through to him. Please stay on message. Please stick with your teleprompter. Not that he only stuck with his teleprompter, but the kind of, one might call them self-inflicted wounds. You called them, your campaign calls them that with the Clinton campaign. But some of the gaffes, some of the more controversial statements he made, most of them took place disproportionately before you and Steve Bannon took over. And I'm wondering, what did you and Steve Bannon say to him to convince him, we will take over, but you really need to listen to us in terms of staying more on message?
When we came on board, there were a couple of things. I said, I don't really divulge private conversations, but I feel confident in telling you that I said to Mr. Trump, you know, you're running against one of the most joyless presidential candidates in history, it seemed to me. So why don't we not be that way as a campaign? Why don't we find a way to be the happy warrior again? He loved doing the rallies. He loved connecting with people that way. So you have to know who your candidate is, and there is no substitute for a quality, compelling candidate, and work with his or her gifts. And I think in the case of Donald Trump, he gets his oxygen from being out there with the people, being with the voters.
Look, one thing I take issue with, I think what did happen, and we discussed this early on, at the very end of the race, there were probably more undecideds than in a lot of races before. And we do think because the director of the FBI sent 2 letters in it, what was an unprecedented intervention in the election, total breach. It's broke against us, but I don't think that was an inherent problem. And in fact, I would argue without those letters, we would have won those, and that's why we would have won the election. You know, the other thing I'd say, I mean, Kellyanne said it was a joyless campaign. I contest that. You know, we had a lot of fun on this campaign. I'm a joyful guy. Hillary's really joyful. We had a lot of fun on the campaign.
Did you struggle? Everybody who knows Hillary Clinton says that the person you see on stage is not the person that you see behind the scenes. That behind the scenes, she's a much warmer person, a much more amusing person. Did you struggle to get that person from behind the scenes out into the crowd?
Look, there were a lot of headwinds in this race. You know, we were trying to make history. She's the first woman to be the nominee of a major party, but also the Russian.
Why is that a headwind? Why is her being a woman a headwind?
Well, I think you know, having worked for a few women candidates now, I think that they sometimes face certain scrutiny that male candidates don't. You know, sometimes people would talk about the way Hillary spoke during a speech. I didn't hear them remark about male candidates that way. But look, I think the bigger issue is that the Russian intelligence, our intelligence agencies all confirmed that Russian intelligence stole emails from our campaign chair and from the DNC and selectively leaked them out over months, starting at our Democratic convention, explicitly for the purpose of intervening in the election, hurting Hillary Clinton, and helping Donald Trump. We faced these headwinds the whole way through. That was tough. And I think it absolutely affected the outcome.
Kellyanne, after you took over, Donald Trump recast or recalibrated 2 of his more controversial proposals. The ban on the total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering this country until we figure out what the hell is going on, I think is the exact quote, and a deportation force to round up the 11 to 12 million undocumented immigrants and remove them from the country. Those changed. He never explicitly repudiated them, but they changed in the way that he talked about them, the way that Governor Pence talked about them, the way that you talked about them. Was that part of the reset for the general election?
I think it's part of explaining what you meant by what you said and putting it in policy, prescription type of language. And that's what he did. So for example, the same day, Jake, that Mr. Trump flew down to Mexico to meet with the Mexican president, he chose to accept the invitation. Secretary Clinton did not. He then flew to Arizona and gave, again, a 10-point plan on how to reform our immigration system. People may say they don't like it, but at least they can read it. They can examine it. He has one. It's there. He delivered it over about 45, 60 minutes. And then, of course, I'm sure it's on the website somewhere. So in that regard, he explained how he would approach the immigration system if he were to be elected.
President-elect Trump, without question, offended many minority groups and women, who are a majority, during this election, whether it is mocking a disabled reporter or seeming to question whether Judge Curiel could do his job because of his heritage. Did he ever in private express any regret about that? Because we heard from him on election night a desire to bring the country together.
Yes.
But that job will be tougher because of some of the things he said, mostly before you came on board.
So I won't divulge private conversations, but I will tell you that shortly after I came on board, Mr. Trump was in North Carolina and gave a speech. And some people in the media refer to it as the regret speech, because toward the middle or the end of it, he expressed regret. That was the word he used. He expressed regret for having offended anyone. He said, particularly with my words. And that's a leader, showing humility and inclusiveness and regret, to use his word. But I want to say this to you also. If you're talking about just the numbers alone, Donald Trump did better among Hispanics and African Americans than did Mitt Romney, John McCain, for example, the last two Republican presidential nominees, Jake. And he did much better among women than almost everybody, certainly everybody publicly predicted. I mean, you've got the first female presidential candidate. She's on the cusp of being the first female president. Where are all these women? Where are the marches of women saying we must have the first female? I didn't see them on Fifth Avenue. I didn't see them in Washington, D.C.
They were volunteering for the campaign?
Well, they didn't come out and vote for her, though.
Let's go to Declan Garvey from Harvard, who has a question for Kellyanne.
My question has to do with President-elect Trump's communication strategy, specifically if he's going to continue using his Twitter account. I know it breeds a lot of authenticity, but he's also been known to tweet out falsehoods and other liabilities. So is that something that he plans to do after inaugurated?
So that's going to be up to him, the Secret Service, and others who have to help decide those issues. I will tell you that the President-elect looks at his social media accounts, a combined 25 million or probably more at this point, users on Twitter and Facebook as a very good platform through which to convey his messages. I can tell you firsthand that there are posts that he makes that otherwise would not be heard or seen by those 25 million people but for him posting them. But he's a unique person who's been following his instincts and his judgment from the beginning.
I think one of the points that I think we'd all be interested in hearing is, in the last week, he tweeted that there were millions of fraudulent votes. There's no evidence that there were millions of fraudulent votes. I don't doubt that there were some fraudulent votes. There always are. But the idea that the only reason Hillary Clinton won the popular vote is because of millions of fraudulent votes is not true. And then when CNN reported on that, he started retweeting people criticizing Jeff Zeleny, our reporter, including a 16-year-old boy. And I think the question arises in a room full of people who want President-elect Trump to succeed, who want him to realize a vision where there are more jobs coming into this country, where you do achieve so much of what you want to achieve. Is that really presidential behavior?
Well, he's the president-elect, so that's presidential behavior, yes.
So the things that Bill Clinton did in the Oval Office that you criticized, those were presidential?
Are you actually comparing what Bill Clinton did in the Oval Office?
You're saying if the president does it, it's presidential.
Shall we review for those who weren't born then what President Clinton did in the Oval Office?
I'm saying just because a president does something doesn't make it presidential.
Yes, I wasn't saying otherwise. But the fact is, this man is now president of the United States. And he's tackling very big issues, the ones that he campaigned on and the ones that he will execute through his first 100-day plan. I know him very well. I'm a trusted advisor. He is committed to making good on the promises and on frankly the plans, and he's going to be focused on that. We need to move on and support the president and the initiatives that he's going to make. I don't like a lot of things that people in leadership do, but they're there, and that should be respected. I mean, I was raised to respect the office of the president and its current occupant, no matter who he or she is.
Jake, I just hope moving forward from this campaign, Kellyanne is right. The campaign's over. It's time to move on. I just hope the truth doesn't get lost or sacrificed.
Hillary Clinton's campaign blames FBI Director James Comey for her loss, but it was the revelations of the email scandal that behind the scenes split her top advisors. We'll have more on